This is what we call the Grouch and the Brainstorm. That is the name of this podcast, and it comes from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just FYI. Do you know where it comes from, Matt?
You told me, but I've already forgotten.
Yeah, I figured. Okay.
I'm not the brainstorm.
Well, first off, my name's Mike. I'm an alcoholic, and I've been sober since June 21 of 2011, if that means anything at all. With me today, I have Matt and Jill. Matt is going to be the Grouch. Jill will be the Brainstorm. And if you go back and look in the Big Book, the way it makes it sound is completely different. The Brainstorm of 1939, the terminology is not as it is today. So we're thinking of brainstorming, people who constantly think about shit over and over and over, and brains. I see that look, Jill.
I'm gonna have some experience.
That's me. I think it's all of us, right? Who hadn't been down a rabbit hole. So normally we would have Jennifer J. She's going to be a co-host on this thing, and she is off bodybuilding, and hope she does well. She's on a stair stepper right now. She told me she was headed to the stair stepper. So we are all members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and however, we don't necessarily represent Alcoholics Anonymous as an organization. We just have experience with that. And Matt, you got experience with it, right?
I've got a lot of experience.
So tell us a little bit about your just introduce yourself to us.
I'm Matt. I'm an alcoholic. May 6th of 2018 is my sobriety date. And we do attend basically the same group together, all three of us. And I have a long, coming up on 5 years, and I've learned a little bit. Still got a lot to learn. As the days go by, the more I learn, realize what I need to learn. So, but yeah, kind of excited to be doing this. So something new for sure.
Okay. So this is Matt with almost 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How about Jill? What you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jill?
Hey, my name is Jill. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 15th, 2010. God, and what a day that was.
The day after Valentine's.
Yes.
Kind of like January 1st.
So, a little bit about me. Where do I even start? God bless.
We're about to enter a therapy session.
I was
No,
born
but seriously.
on a dark, stormy night.
Here we go. This is our moment of fame.
It was
right
like, I
here.
was a happy child,
I was.
I never fit in.
No, actually, I was that happy child.
I remember
I
when
was
I was one.
ecstatic. I mean, I had a great childhood, and I was very happy.
Here in Bossier City?
No, actually, I was raised on a hippie farm in the Ozark Mountains, and we were strict vegetarians. Ate from our garden, drank our goat's milk. So I was raised on a farm. Yeah, yeah. And then I think about 5 years later, we moved back to Shreveport, and I've pretty much lived in the Shreveport-Bossier area since. But since recovery, I've gotten sober. I had to leave town. I was just like, I need to get out of here. I do not need to be in this town while I do this. But I did. I moved to Monroe and got sober there, and lived in Colorado for a couple of years, and then came back home.
And how long have you been back?
About 5 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And where did you get sober? Monroe?
Monroe,
Louisiana.
Actually, to put that, I can't even think of the words. What's the words I'm trying to say? Say no drugs. Rabel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Rabel
not,
Recovery?
No.
Palmetto.
Yes. I just want to make sure it's Rabel. Mm-hmm. It's not Rayville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're very proper down here.
Yeah.
Got to get that right.
It really matters how you pronounce it. It's no. I have family members that got sober at Palmetto.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I ended up, going there and lived in a halfway house for about 9 months after I left Palmetto, and I worked there for 4 years. So I've been in the working in treatment centers and places like that for the past 13 years.
Okay. And so, do you remember your very first meeting?
Actually, I do. It was 1995, and I was in treatment at Brentwood, and they took us to an outside meeting in their druggy buggy to the Koala Club. And back then, they were smoking in the meeting, and it was just a big cloud of smoke. And from what I perceived, everybody was bitching about
Not being able to drink.
Life.
just bitching.
Yeah.
And I didn't get anything out of it. Well, I mean, I really wasn't paying much attention. I mean, they had me on Xanax, so
At the Koala Club?
no, Brentwood.
Oh. Hence starts our Xanax problem.
Yes, well, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And then I stayed on that for the next 20 years. And I mean, because I wasn't exactly convinced I had a problem
With Xanax.
with anything.
And this was your very first exposure to a meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
And how old were you?
19.
Okay.
I was young and I knew it all.
Well, yeah, it's mad. We get to be that age, and then we start forgetting. As we know it all at 20, and then we start forgetting as
I
we
don't
get
know
older.
nothing today. I'm telling you, I know nothing.
Yeah.
The longer I go, the less I know. So,
I agree. I was a complete idiot, and I ended up going to a couple of other Brentwood again and Willis Knighton again, and just
ARC. You go to ARC Recovery at Willis Knighton, or
Willis Knighton South. It was like back then in '95 or '96, like their behavioral wellness center or something.
so was you terrified at your first meeting?
I don't think I was terrified, but I was very judgmental, and I had absolutely nothing in common with these people.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, I was not convinced I had a problem, and even though I was using on a daily basis and had been using on a daily basis for many, many, many years, I told myself I could quit any time, and I believed it.
So, track forward to whenever you went to your very first AA meeting and it was the real deal. You were convinced you had a problem. Do you remember that meeting?
I don't remember the first week of treatment. And we did meetings. I have my Desire chip and I have my 30-day chip, but I do not remember getting either one of them. I had a pretty lengthy detox that last time, and to be honest with you, no, I wasn't convinced. I left treatment after 106 days, and I remember telling my mother, like, nah, this AA thing isn't for me. I don't need to do this. Yeah, I was going to do it on my own.
Yeah.
But then I moved into a halfway house, and they were like, well, you need to do 180 meetings in 180 days. And I was like, yeah, okay. And it grew on me.
Yeah.
It really did.
I like that terminology. It grew on me. I like that.
Yeah. It wasn't at all what I expected, and it's everything that I needed, and I'm just really grateful that I stuck in there. I mean, I went to many meetings crying, sitting on the back row, not participating, not getting involved, and I struggled badly. I just thought I'd throw the LI in.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Proper language, I don't know it. Hell, I can barely write.
I mean, we are in Louisiana after all.
Yeah, well.
this is, the grammar state.
You would. So I read a lot, right? Seriously. And, I read 4 hours a day every day. I have since, long time ago.
Nice.
But you would think that I could spell. But if it wasn't for spell check, I probably would, no one would ever check back in with me. Like, they would think I was still out there drinking because I can't spell for nothing. I just can't.
I know a lot of brilliant people can't spell at all.
Well, I wouldn't call myself brilliant. I let other people do that for me. I am sitting at a table talking about my my recovery. But so happy childhood.
Yeah.
More than one rehab.
Yes.
How many?
I believe there was a couple of inpatient, dual diagnosis, more like mental ward places. And then there was Palmetto in 2010, so about 4. The first 3 times, I just wasn't there for drugs, but they were like, you have a drug problem, like a really bad one.
Yeah.
I mean, I came into treatment with like paraphernalia, like razors and mirrors and stuff, and they were like, are you kidding me?
We were just talking about Jeffrey Dahmer before we started. So that's where the cat problem that came up around Palmetto back in 2010. Y'all remember they found a bunch of dead cats out there.
How did you know about that? You know these things, huh?
I read 4 hours a day.
I know what happened to the cats.
I'm
I
sure
will
you do.
never say a word.
So do you remember, like, so your first meeting was at the Koala Club? Right?
Yes.
Obviously, you've been to other clubs.
Yeah.
Because how long have you been coming back to the Koala Club?
I just started going back there about 7-8 months ago.
That's what I thought.
I lived in Shreveport, so I was just basically going to Shreveport meetings, but then I moved out to Bossier, and I lived just right down the street from that. And so I was like, I'll just start going to the Koala Club. And let me tell you something. I felt like a newcomer.
Yeah. That
all
happened
up-
to me in Mandeville.
All over again.
Yeah.
Sitting there all shy and, bashful.
Remember when you first came in, I asked you, I said, don't you go to Shreveport? Because I was working a job where I had to go to weird hour meetings and stuff, and I remember seeing you at a few meetings, and
Okay.
I just remembered you, but I was like, yeah, I think you go. But
Yeah, I've been in a lot of meetings, and I like to stay in meetings. I have since I've been back, 'cause that's basically the whole reason I moved back from Colorado. I lived on top of a mountain in Estes Park, and there wasn't a whole lot of meetings, and we'd have to drive 45 minutes to Boulder for a good meeting. We get home like around 11.
Yeah.
And so I got weird up there, needless to say, and I decided it was time to come back because I knew what could possibly happen next. And I just dove right in, back into meetings and all of that.
It's amazing. So I just, basically just listened to Jill's story, and going from happy childhood to substance issues to many rehabs, or, a few rehabs, I guess. Many could be relative. And then getting to a point where you mentally know, if I don't do something now, I'm headed in that direction. And that's a telltale, we know enough about ourselves that we know just enough that whatever's going on ain't working for us, and the crazy starts to set back in, if it ever really left. Sometimes I think it's just, well, and I hate to get off into the big book, because whoever's listening to this may not have a big book handy, and it helps to have someone read it. But if you look in the big book, there's where Dr. Young is talking to this fella who he tells him, I've never seen an alcoholic as bad off as you, right? Get well. You're basically screwed. And he said, we're trying to set aside what used to be the ideas and emotions for a new set of emotions and ideas to come along. So he never says remove. And, at this time, they knew the problem. They knew they had the whole theory of an allergy, and they knew the phenomenon of craving. They knew that. They had the problem. They didn't have the solution. I think the one thing Bill Wilson brought to the table was the solution, which is basically just sharing with other people. Or not sharing, but working with other people on these different things that go on. Even if it's not working a step, it's just going in and talking to them. It helps us stay sober when we do that. And
right.
I think that it doesn't necessarily say they've been removed. They've just been cast to one side so that one could set in. And I mean, we can take the big book, we can take any book and just pick it just to hell and back and give our own little opinions of it. But if you look at other alcoholics besides just the three of us here, and look at other people in there, you can see where what used to dominate their life no longer does. There's something else in there. It takes what it takes to get that jolt. I think staying out of jail is a pretty good domination, right? You go to jail for a lot of stuff. You can go to jail for killing, I don't go out and not kill just to stay out of jail, but I not drinking for some reason. I've had my trouble, and I've always been drinking whenever I do. So what about Matt? How many times did you attempt to get sober?
Well, I didn't have any. The woman I was married to, we lived in near Jackson, Mississippi area, and I grew up here, but didn't really have any family or resources to like know, hey, you can go to treatment or you can go to meetings or whatever, because nobody around me could spell AA. So, and so
Kept putting an E in there, didn't he?
yeah, man,
Thought I had a spelling.
man, look, that and they were, and so it was just not a good environment. But I know, I work with guys now and stuff, and we do step one, and they talk about powerless. I knew for a very long time, I had no question about it, that I was horribly addicted to stuff. The problem was I didn't see a way to change it, and I tried multiple times, just quit, and like would have to lock my wife and kids at the time, send them to her mother's and go, I'm just going to climb the walls until this stops. I did that twice.
The Waylon Jennings approach.
Oh, yes, sir. Old school. And that wasn't fun. And I remember looking for my pistol after about 9 days one time, and I didn't have any bullets. I was just going to blow my brains out. I was like, I'm not doing this. And I can't go back to what I was doing. So I looked up one night. I'd been kicked out of the house. That happened a lot. I don't know if any of y'all ever dealt with that. But I'd been sleeping in my truck for about a week. And it wasn't even my truck, but I've been sleeping in it. Didn't own the truck either, and didn't have a cell phone. So I was like, maybe these AA thing, I don't know what that is, but we'll do that. So I looked it up in the yellow pages or whatever, the white pages, AA, and it was a place where I knew.
Should have been right there at the beginning.
It was real easy for me to find with my Louisiana public education. I didn't have to look very far. But
right next to Aardvark Bell Bonds.
Yes, and AAA towing, right before AAA.
Y'all
so
tied together.
yes, oh yeah, AA and bail bonds kind of go together too. But I looked up a meeting, went to this place, and I sat out in the parking lot, and I mean sick, shaking, sweating, as bad. Probably hadn't bathed in 2 weeks. Couldn't eat any food because I just threw it up. And I remember sitting in the truck and I was watching those people go in, and they looked so normal. And I was just like, they're going to make fun of me or something. Like, they're going to be like, what the hell's wrong with you, And I didn't know anything, And I remember sitting out there, and I didn't go in the meeting. And I never went. And I went on for about 4 more years like that, living that way. And finally, one day, as a matter of fact, my ex-wife now, some of her family, she didn't even care, But they came down and they were like, "Hey, we have a detox place that will take you if you want to go detox." And for whatever reason, I decided to do that, and it was that or kill myself, And I'm not even joking. It was at that point, and they took me that night to a detox place, and I, like you, had a long detox because I had a variety of substances in my body. So I was in there about 5 days, and then I remember sitting in there, and there was an old man. He played football for Johnny Vaught at Ole Miss back in the day, and he had 44 years clean from pills and alcohol, which were my 2 main sports that I played. And I was laying on that plastic seat in there before the meeting, and it was like hours sober, not even a day. And he was sitting in the back of the room, and I would actually go to the meetings in the detox like nobody else did that because it was optional. And I'm laying across the seat, and I was like, "Hey, dude, what do they do? Like, do they take this, like, they gonna give me a brain transplant, or like, are they gonna brainwash me? How is this gonna work? Because I see no way that this works." And he's like, "Oh no, man," he's all calm, and he's like, "It's not a big deal, man. You just, And I was like, "It's not going to work. This is terrible. This already is not working. If they don't if they don't do a brain transplant, or something, they don't know who they're fooling with here, And they did know who they were fooling with, And but for whatever reason, I kind of stuck with it, and had a bed open at a facility in Corinth, Mississippi. It was about 3 hours north of there, almost to Memphis, and I'd never been there, and I knew it was 5 hours from where I lived, and I didn't have a phone. And I was like, well, I can't just leave. So if they send me up there, it's a long walk, and I'm lazy, so I'm not going to walk back. So maybe I'll stay. And I did. I went to that place, didn't know anything, didn't ask any questions, just went. And I went in, and I sat down, and the counselors rotated, I guess as clients came in. And just so happened, the lady of all the counselors there that got me that day, shout out to Miss B, by the way, and was just like leveling, man. And we sat in there, and she said, if you'll do the stuff that I'm asking you to do, we can get this on track. And I said, for once in my life, I said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'm not going to ask no questions. And she was great. I think if I would have had any of those other counselors, they were very medically, they were not one of us. Come to find out, Miss B was the only one of us that actually worked there. And it was like a kind of a thing open, and they had an optional deal to stay for an extra 60 days. And I tipped in there about 20 days in, and I was like, well, I'm pretty much cured. I think we're good. Yeah. And she said, no, I think you need to stay a while longer with us. And I was like, let's pray about that. I said, I'm going to go back here and pray. You pray up here. I don't think you prayed about it. And we'll come back together later on this. You said that real quick. And she goes, you can go pray about it, but when you come back, that's still the deal. And I was like, I ain't going to tell you what I said because we're recording. But I was like, all right. So I went back, laid on my bunk, and I went, I told her I'd do whatever. So I did. And that was a game changer, was staying that extra amount of time. The long detox, by the way, I did wind up, I went about 3 days in there hallucinating. Shoes were moving across the floor, all that good stuff. They're like, we're going to detour this for a minute. They took me to a Brentwood type facility, a little one. And I remember waking up that morning and, they had taken the shoes out of my shoelaces. And I had a 4X men's scrub top and a men's small pants with no shoelaces.
Like Peter Griffin.
But here's what's jacked up, okay? I'm complaining about shoelaces, but the shoes that I owned, the only pair I owned, didn't have any rubber on them. So when you don't get shoelaces with that, it's hard to hold that together. So it's just like little stuff flopping. Like there was barely enough to hold them together. And I remember sitting there that morning watching all them guys walk around that day room, and I was like, you are the coolest dude on the planet right now. Like, you've come a long way with your life, And that was a moment of me sitting on that couch and going, you got to get this crap together, man. So, but they were the sweetest people on the planet. And I got out, moved from where I was at back here where I grew up, and good support from my family, my brothers, and came to the Koala Club. It was the first one I ever went to outside of treatment. And it was some anxiety, but it was a lot less anxiety than suicide. So that's what I did, and I didn't know what the hell everybody was talking about, and I didn't really care because they just said go to meetings, so that's where I went and kept doing that.
When you talk about your suicide, did you reach the point where, and alcohol can do this to you, right? But did you reach the point where you made up your mind, I'm going to kill myself? Let me change that a little bit. If you had bullets, would you have actually killed yourself?
Yep.
So you reached that point to where there's no return?
I laid in my floor of my living room on about day 8 or 9, and I had thrown up everywhere. I couldn't hold any food down. I couldn't stand the smell of food. I was laying in my boxers, pouring sweat. I weighed about 140 pounds, and I could not go any further. Like my brain just, all that stuff when we get sober starts coming back, and then you're withdrawn, and it was like there was nobody. I didn't even have a phone to call anybody. Like it was just, I was just trying to gut it out. And and I mean, I joke about it, but literally I tore that house apart. If I could have found one bullet, and the way I do things, I'd have probably shot my ear off or something. And only had one bullet, so that's what would have happened. Would have wasted it.
And a pierced ear.
And a pierced ear,
Yeah, the gauges and the big gauge. That's a 9mm.
That's a 12 gauge. That's what that is. But
yeah, I can only imagine.
So
you had a pistol or a shotgun?
I had a pistol.
Okay.
You just said gauge.
No, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, so it was that was a lot of fun, and I finally went back to doing what I was doing because I was like, I'm gonna, but it kept on and kept on, and then it got so bad that I knew I couldn't go through that again, but I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, and yeah, and I was just like, I don't see no way out of this, and so thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. I can tell you that, and a whole lot of people. So
Yeah, people is I had a sponsor down in New Orleans. His name is Jerry, and whether or not I agree with what Jerry says or don't say, it really didn't matter. He was my sponsor, and he would always say that God speaks to us through people. That he had never had this epiphany or this thing come into his head to where it was telling him in his voice, go do this or don't do that. It would be God speaks to him through people, and how I treat people is how God wants me to treat people, and therefore I'm doing God's work, or that's the way he put it. And we talked today in a meeting about relationships, right? And if you think about it, and I don't know about you guys, I know for me, and I have a very limited life, but relationships make up probably 95% of my life, right? I mean, like 95%. And those are relationships with coworkers, relationships with my fellow people at Alcoholics Anonymous, relationships with everybody. And the thing about it is, alcohol caused me to almost completely withdraw from people totally out of that little. So I walk in AA, these people are there, I didn't get the invite. I don't know if y'all got the memo in the mail said, hey, Mike, come see us. But I walk in there and I don't want anything to do with these people. These same people who are going to ultimately spend their time saving my life. Isn't it the way the alcohol does that to us? And and the reason I brought up the whole suicide thing is because, and I listen to you guys' stories, and and it almost makes me and my little story feel inadequate, because I came into AA thinking, man, I've dug this huge hole, and my life is just absolutely pitiful and horrible, and nobody loves me, and and to be quite honest with you, compared to you guys' stories, I was a spoiled ass brat at 38 years old. I was spoiled. I mean, it's just the way it worked for me, and I did not grow up spoiled. I grew up in we had limited means. My dad was the household earner. I guess I want to use correct language. I don't want to say anything that's going to offend anybody. So my dad earned the paycheck that supported us, and he we had three of us. Me and my little sisters, who I say little sisters are 43 years old today, but it was us and my mother. My mother took care of us, and so growing up, we didn't, our life wasn't like that, But by the time I was 38 years old, when I got sober, I was sitting here thinking that nobody had a life as bad as I did, right? And I suicide, though, was where I was going with that. You brought up suicide, and I had reached that point. I'd reached the point of suicide to where I made up my mind. This is going to happen right now. I'm fixing to go in here. And my method was to take a whole bunch of blood pressure medicine. I had like a 90-day supply, and I hadn't been taking it. I was going to take all 90 days worth and go to sleep. That's what I figured would happen. I have still to this day have not researched, even if that, it could take some adverse, kind of like overdosing on Viagra or something. I don't know what's going to happen with that, right? But I'm just saying I was going to take the whole 90-day supply and go to sleep. But I had reached that.
I was going to let Jill comment on that. I'm staying out of that one.
She's the counselor. But I had reached that decision, and once you reach that decision, it's almost like a switch flips in your brain. And I haven't been the same since, right? So an act of God interrupted that. A literal act of God, like lightning struck, and it interrupted my, like I'm headed to the Old West to do something, and all of a sudden, an earthquake happens, and I don't get to do it. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, an act of God, and I've had that happen twice in my recovery. An act of God, and anybody can debate that all they want, but an act of God actually caused the pause long enough for me to realize this isn't what I want to do. But once I reach that point, I feel personally like I haven't been the same myself. I have same self as I was before. There is only so much that I will even tolerate now from people, who out there. It's just like, hey, get off your pity pot. But I don't share, get off your pity pot. I was at the verge of suicide and something, I don't get all into that. But as far as, the recovery experience, there's only so much I'm going to listen to and put up with. So but this goes back to the spoiled brat thing, right? My experience with my very first AA meeting was kind of like Jill said when she came to the Koala Club. I said it. I went I went to Brentwood 6 times, inpatient, outpatient. I went to the ARC, which is a Willis Knighton program. Most of these things were, and we say in AA, we had a back problem. Well, I had an ass problem because I had to keep people off my ass.
Your ass, yep.
And I had the kids, my ex-wife, God love her. I'm going to say this, and if it hadn't have been for her completely giving up on me, I probably would not have even made another attempt. But I called her the last time and said, hey, I'm going back to Brentwood. This time it's going to work. And she said, good luck. I hope it works for you, man, but I can't have nothing to do with you. And, and we and her had been friends since we were 14, 15 years old. So, and then, of course, you have the children and their aspect of it. But I walk into I get out of Brentwood and checking out, had some issues checking out, and they said, you need to go to an AA meeting. And I remember thinking to myself, I've been here like 15 days, right? I remember thinking, I probably should. They really need my help over there. They could use some of my wisdom at the local, And I had been to the Koala Club 20 years before. Someone came and picked me up and took me to the Koala Club, and I guess it was biker night or something from my memory. I didn't think I even had a drinking problem. But obviously somebody did. Somebody just drops by the house and says, hey, my wife is friends with your wife, and we think you need to go to the Koala
Oh, wow.
Club. Yeah. And I think I hate to give bad info here, but I think all 4 of us loaded up in some form of vehicle and headed over to the Koala Club. And I'll just, that kind of stuff is not for me. It's just not for me. So I'm not a joiner. Thanks but no thanks kind of situation. And it took 11 years after that very first thing. It took 11 years for me to pull my head out of whatever. But it took 11 years of loss. It took getting to the brink of suicide. It took me losing pretty much everything materially, But when I started to lose myself, right? So I get out of Brentwood anyway, and I'm going to go help these folks because I have 15 days of recovery, and most of which had barbiturates to keep me from, season. And I go over there, and I'm going to tell you, I did, like I shared today, I felt like everybody in that room had their stuff together. I walk in the room. You don't know how long anybody's been there, right? You can see Matt, Jill, or Fred, Ted. You don't have a clue. Some people you think just got there be like, have a sobriety date like back in the 70s or 80s. And then others that sit there all confident and that you think their sobriety date is, you think that they have this long sobriety date and you find out they've been sober 3 weeks. Well, so I walk in there, but I'm terrified. Just to be quite honest, if there's a newcomer listening out there, I was terrified. I didn't want any part of this, but I had to do it. We talk about courage, and that's having fear and still going about and doing it. And I had the fear enough that I had to do it. I was absolutely terrified of the people. And then you guys probably, I know you don't. Matt might remember a little bit. Jill wasn't around, but we had folks in there like, Woodrow.
That whole back row.
And Batman. And
was just loads of old men. It was like gazillions of years.
Now someday, you know, I'm hoping I get to be one of them
I
old
mean,
men people are talking
you're-
about.
You're pretty
Right.
old, Mike.
Yeah, I'm getting there, man. I'm 50 years old, bro. So
But you know, the talking about the newcomer, that sitting in my truck that night is why I am the way I am today when new people come in. Because I remember sitting in that truck and I remember that whole deal. And I've sat in there and watched people come down the hall with somebody else and they get to the open door and they turn and walk right back out. And I have literally got up and jogged up. Hey, come sit down. You want a cup of coffee? You know, because I know all that. And a lady in our club the other night, we got up to pray, and she looked over at me just out of the blue, and it brought tears to my eyes, and she said, "You're my first day person." And I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "You're the first person that ever talked to me when I came in this room." And I said, "I don't think you could give me a better compliment ever. It means a lot to me." And I just don't want, I know people are going to feel that way, but I don't want them to feel that if I can help it and be there, you know. And I was actually going, and somebody came in the other day, and I got up to go introduce myself to him, and one of our regulars goes, "What are you running for, mayor or something?" And I just looked at him. I said, "Whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Whatever you want to call it, it's fine." And I just went on, but that place is really good, and I see a lot of people. The attitude of the place and the attitude of the people chairing the meetings, and I've been in them where a guy got up and said, "I don't care about this meeting. I was asked to chair it at the last minute. I don't feel good." And I just went, what if you're walking off the street and this is what you get right here? They're out. They're never coming back, you know? And I just feel like in there we laugh and we joke. And the biggest thing for me sitting in there was, like, Randy was one of the first people I ever heard share that I listened to.
Me too.
And I was just like, he's so funny. He's so, like, just throws his bit. I'm like, how are these people throwing their business out here? Like, I'm not telling nobody, you know? And they're laughing and they're just like, whatever. So, and I'm going, what are we doing in here? Like, what are they, you know? And now it's just, it's such a, and I just went, this is real in here. Whatever's going on is real. It may not always be pretty or polished or none of that, but every second of it is real. And that's why I keep hanging around. So,
yeah, well, it's, and to say there's nothing to be terrified about, I would probably be remiss. But like you know, even when I share, I try to think about that newcomer.
Yeah.
And if there's anything I could tell a newcomer, regardless of what you see on the outside, because we see a lot of stuff happen on the outside. People, for some reason, even as a newcomer, I would pay attention to what vehicles people drove, how they dressed, all these what things that just do not matter. And on the inside, we are exactly the same. We have been there, man. I'm telling you, in my last stint in treatment, there was a cat that called me in his office. He was running the I guess he was a head counselor or the counselor, whatever, you know. He was running that thing, and he called me in the office, and he's like, you know, why do you keep coming back? Why do you keep coming here, man? You're wasting your time. You're wasting our time. We'll keep taking your money. But he talked for a few minutes, and then he set a 25-year chip down on the table. I'm thinking it was 25. I may be wrong, but I'm thinking it was 25, and that's been 12 years ago. The dude's got like 37 years now. But he said, I know exactly how this is going to happen. I know exactly what's going to happen with you. And then he started telling me about stuff that was happening at work that he had no way of knowing. Stuff that was happening in my family that he had no way of knowing. And he said, I asked him kind of in a general way, how do you even know this stuff? And he basically said, because every single person that comes in here has the exact same problems. You are no different, man. And I thought I was a cool cat. You know, I thought I was like Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men.
Yeah,
you know?
so unique.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and truth is, you know, I was dying. I was dying on the inside. So, you know, the terror and the those kind of things we have to sometimes get past. You know,
and I think people have images of things that doesn't always turn out to be that way. You know, and you know, you build it up in your head, and like I said, sitting in that truck, and sitting out there, and you're like, man, they're just gonna all be like, look at this loser, look at this dude. I mean, let's all toast his butt, and or it's just gonna be a bunch of old men that are all pissed because they can't drink anymore, and everybody's made them stop drinking. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. I already know I can't do that, and couldn't be further from the truth. But
isn't that crazy? One of the first things that happened to me, and maybe y'all have some memories of some of these things that happened in your first few meetings. It may not have been the first ones, but one of the first things that happened to me is Phil F. walked up to me, and he's rubbing my shoulders from behind, which already
gotta watch Phil.
I have never been in jail that long, but he walks up behind me, he's rubbing my shoulders, and he says, so you're new here, and I was like, yes, sir. I was still respectful, and I was worried he was going to try to gang save me. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, that's all right. It's okay to be new, but do you have a big book? And I said, yes, sir. I have a lot of big books. They give you one every time you go to treatment. And he said, have you read the doctor's opinion? And I said, yes, sir. I've read it a lot. He goes, why don't you go home tonight and read it again? And I said, okay. I was just, at that point, the facade kind of fell away, and I just kind of said, maybe I need to listen to one of these guys. And he had given his sobriety date earlier in the meeting, which is 1979. So, my head goes straight to, I'm 6 years old, the Bee Gees are famous. Some of these big acts that are now old haven't even been thought of. Guns N' Roses is still 10 years away, so Motley Crue and all those fellas hadn't came along, and there's this guy that's been coming this long. And my second thought was, you've been coming around since 1979. What the hell is wrong with you? Why
are you still here?
Jesus, what a drinking problem. Good Lord.
Some may be sicker than others, and
Man.
this fella here has got a bad case of it. But do y'all have any of those things that kind of stood out in one of your first meetings? Jill, do you? Someone that might have approached you, or in a positive way?
I really don't recall. I was just not doing well for many years, and
in the program.
Yes, I fought it. And I wasn't one of those people that, hey, I'm going to fake it till I make it. I cried. I was pissed. And that was the majority of my first couple of years. I had an amazing sponsor, and I did what I was supposed to do majority of the time, but I had a very difficult time reining in my emotions, and for the longest time, I thought everybody was full of shit. I did. Everybody was. And they didn't understand as well, and so I didn't believe anybody. I trusted my sponsor, but I still didn't think she understood. Again, that terminal uniqueness. It was just kind of ridiculous.
You still have the same sponsor?
No, she ended up passing away of cancer, but I have a great sponsor now. I've had her for the past 5 years. Okay. Been through the steps about 8 or so times, and which it's a beautiful thing. Every time I go through them, something really cool happens. But I've had guidance, but I wish I could put this into words about how deranged I was for so long, and it took me years to fully surrender to AA. I would give just a little bit and then take it back, give a little bit, take it back, and I was still trying not to make many meetings because maybe I can stay sober and do one meeting every month or every 2 weeks or something like that. And I was just always trying to figure out a way out of it. I just wasn't convinced this is what my rest of my life was going to be. And that was for, the first 5 years of my recovery. But once I surrendered, I was like, I'm in. I started realizing that I'm a much happier person when I'm in 3 or 4 meetings a week.
Yeah.
And that's what I do now. But as far, I don't recall.
Well, how about you? Do you have any?
Here's what I recall. Mike, Larry, Rhonda, Bill H., who's speaking coming up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Philip, those people were the first, and Jennifer were the first handful of people when I came in that room that introduced themselves to me. Randy was another one that I remember distinctly. Larry was the first one. Larry immediately, hey man, how you doing? Miss Rhonda was the second. But you guys, and what all that has in common is y'all all have many years of sobriety, and y'all still do that. But I got in there and I heard Phil, and he says May of '79, and I'm going, dude, I was born in March of '79, and I have 97 days of sobriety right now. Like, I can't do whatever he's doing. Like, there's something wrong with that dude. Like, that's not happening. So, but then, and I didn't know this was a program thing. I just didn't know what it was. But I go about a week, right? I asked my sponsor on my second day, because my counselor, love her to death, said, listen, idiot, when you leave here, wherever you're going on this planet, you just go find an AA meeting and go in there and get somebody to sponsor you. Don't wait. Don't collect $200. Don't do none of that. Yes, ma'am. So my second meeting I went to, Bobby had raised his hand both times. The second meeting, I asked him to sponsor me. He did. But I sat in there and was pretty miserable. And then a guy came in, and I couldn't identify with all that. I couldn't, 20 years and all that shit. I was like, man, I can't make till lunch is what I'm trying to do right now. Just make it to lunchtime. And a guy came in and he sat down in front of me one night in the middle of the room, and he had his arm up on the chair. He was ghost white, man, sweaty, and his hand was up on the armrest in front of me, and he had a napkin, a Kleenex, and his hand was just shaking, and he was wadding that Kleenex up, and it was just powder by the end of the meeting. And I was like, I don't know who this dude is, but he's sick, dude, way sicker than me, you know. And it dawned on me, wait, I'm not that bad anymore. And it was only like 9. So after the meeting, I'm like, hey man, you okay? Like, you look jacked up, you know. And he's like, oh my God. So that guy's my friend today, and he's got about the same length, but we talk to each other every day. His name's Brooks, and Brooks lived with his mother, and he won't mind me telling this because he's told a lot of people, and was shooting Oxycontin in his arm and passing out in a recliner with lit cigarettes. So all his pants had holes in them from cigarette burns at night, nodding off. And he was 30-something years old, and we kind of came in and we were like tight, and then we found out we did the same kind of work. And so every day at 5:30 we always talked, and he's like, this sucks. And I was like, I know, but it sucks for me too, but it doesn't suck as bad as it does for you right now. So keep coming, it'll get less suckier. And that's what, and for like a year, we just less suckied it every day. And I mean, for lack of a better word. And today, Brooks has 2 beautiful babies. He lives in Benton. He has a house. He is a head administrator at a rehab facility.
Yeah.
Go figure that one out.
Yeah.
And when I call that dude in the middle of the night, and I have called him with people at my doorstep in the middle of the night, he answers the phone and he goes, what's up? And I go, I got somebody needs help. And he goes, I got him. And we get him in treatment. And that's how Brooks rolls. And I couldn't deal with the 30 years and all that stuff. I do now. I love to hear that. And I love that they sit in there because I want people to see that. And that's, to me, that's service work. When Joe and Phil are sitting in there and they say their sobriety date, they're letting people know. And you and Randy and all the, you know, they're going, okay, I can achieve something here. You know, it's possible to do that. And, but when I first came in, I was like, there's no shot at that. I mean,
I was so consumed in self-pity and self that I couldn't.
I know.
Fathom.
You shut out what everybody's saying because the most important person in the room is me. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I can't remember because I think I was so consumed in poor, pitiful me and I need help. And
but like Brooks though, what was so weird, and I thought about it, we've even talked about it years later, and I'm like, here's what's crazy, dude. You had just a few months less than I did. But I was able to get through it because I was thinking about encouraging you instead of, and I didn't even know that was the program. You know, I didn't know that's what it was based on. But by talking to him after the meetings, then I went home and I was like, okay, it's not that bad. I'm not as bad as Brooks. That's what I told Brooks. I was like, I just used you as an example of like, I'm past that point, you know?
Yeah.
And
well, you know, I'm gonna read a little bit out of the doctor's opinion because this is what stuck out to me whenever Phil told me that day to go home and read it. And I know no alcoholic likes to be read at, but I'm going to read just this little, it's a whole paragraph, but I'm going to read it. So, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Essentially, that's why they drink. The sensation is so elusive that, while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops, and they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with the firm resolution not to drink again. Ever been there? I have. This is repeated over and over, and unless the person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. And that one little snippet helped me out just a little bit, and maybe it'll help that person out that's trying to debate on whether or not they're going to attend Alcoholics Anonymous. And at least have the willingness that it takes to come in, and instead of like Jill was talking about, I got so much anxiety and so much stuff going on, maybe I can just stop and listen to someone else. Because as I've listened to your stories tonight, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, my story's not that bad. I didn't, and truth is, my story's not over yet. I think Travis says it best when he says everything I own can fit in a shot glass.
Absolutely.
Everything I have in my whole life will fit in a shot glass, and once I'm on, buddy. It's just no holds barred. So we're gonna go ahead and close out this episode. The next episode, I do want to kind of lead into what we're going to be talking about on the next episode. And I'm going to deliver the content to whoever wants to hear it in kind of the order I took it. So I would like to discuss, and you two be thinking, because I would like to have you two back if y'all have time, sure, maybe later in the week or somewhere. And I don't know when this is going to be produced. I'll edit some of this out and, smudge it into about a 45-minute section. But and we've been talking, believe it or not, for 53 minutes.
Wow.
Almost 53 minutes we have sat here and discussed stuff, almost the full length without all the preambles and stuff. But we're going to talk about getting that sponsor.
Yep.
That is going to be, because that, for me, and no, this is not all about me, right? But for me, that was the second hardest thing to do, was get that sponsor. Walking in the room was tough. It's like asking a girl to a dance, which I've never done,
but
because
it's a dude.
But I was scared they would say no, so I just never did it. And my experience with talking to my very first sponsor, and by the way, my first sponsor passed away as well. He right after we did the 12 steps, and he introduced me to the service work.
Yeah.
He got a heart condition, and he needed a transplant. He needed it like fast, and
Mine probably will hear this at some point, and he's real elderly. I want to get that on the internet or wherever this is going, just so he can hear that. He'll be proud. He'll love it.
I think Matt came into the rooms of AA and found out you can lie about fishing and get away with it, and he's like, I found my tribe.
He looked at me yesterday, and he goes, you got a birthday coming up? And I said, yeah. He goes, we're going to rework the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, all of them, start to finish. And I said, man, I wanted to do that. And he goes, it has nothing to do with alcohol. You have a fishing issue that we're going to work out, and it's going to be about fishing. I went, oh, well, that wasn't what I meant, but all right, we'll do that too.
Let's do it.
So,
well, Matt, Jill, thank you guys for coming by. I look forward to recording our next episode, and hopefully it'll be within the next few days or so.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.